right, well, let us begin. So the first thing that I'll ask you to do is to get a piece of paper, a piece of scrap paper. You're gonna need that. So look for a piece of scrap paper. All right, so really crumple that bugger up. Now put it on the floor and you can stomp on it right in front of you. Okay, very good. Don't rip it, just kind of make a mess out of it. And then when the paper is good and messed up, you can put it back on your desk. So put it back. And now apologize to the paper. Sorry. Yeah, apologize. As we consider what the paper looks like. Well, how does it look?
Rough.
It looks rough. Still okay. So how does this relate to being bullied?
The damage is done.
It's a permanent impression and effect on you that
All right.
cannot be undone.
All right, it leaves a permanent effect on you. Bullying has lifelong implications. There's research suggesting that. There's a lot of research in terms of bullying and what it does to the effect for people in adulthood. So that's something to keep in mind. It also underscores the importance of recognizing bullying when it occurs and then doing something about it when it happens. So we're going to take a look at developing an awareness of bullying. When does it occur? What do we do about it? And what we can do about bully-proofing schools and the community. So let us start with a little bit about me. We'll take it from the very beginning. Things were pretty typical at first, at 24 hours of age. My wife says I look like an egg. And then, at 18 months, what I call the regressive autism bomb exploded. And that happens to about 30% of us on the autism spectrum. And what happens at that 18 to 24 months is that we have a loss of functional communication, meltdowns. I withdrew from the environment. So in brief, I became a pretty severely affected child on the autism spectrum. I believe that we have the technology, we have the know-how, we have the wherewithal, so that autistic individuals leading fulfilling and productive lives can be the rule rather than the exception. So what did my parents do? Well, after a year, it took them a year to find a place for diagnosis. Fortunately, my parents refuted the professional's recommendations for institutionalization to a place like Willowbrook, because that's what a diagnosis of autism, that was the prognosis. You get sent off to an institution. And that's all people knew. My parents knew otherwise, and they convinced the school to take me in about a year. So it was during that year that my parents implemented what we would today refer to as an intensive home-based early intervention program. It's regular school kindergarten. That was a social and academic catastrophe. You know what happens to people who are different in grade school? Bullying.
And punishment by the teachers.
Yeah, you can get bullied by the teachers too. Right. So repeating the letter B over and over again, I guess, didn't endear me to my classmates. I didn't know how to interact with them in a way that they could understand or interact with me. I was interested in different things. I wasn't interested in kickball or various sports or watching TV, but much rather would have, when I did, nerd into my chemistry set, take things apart, take apart radios. In those days, I'd visit all of the yard sales in the area and pick up an old tube radio for maybe 25 cents. Take that apart and get it back together again and combine radios and other
At age
things.
6? At age 6.
Maybe that was more like 8.
That's
When
incredible.
I was getting to radios. So if we look at what bullying is, continuing to look at that, we can now look at the different types of bullying that exist. We've got verbal bullying. So that's when we see taunting, calling people names, making threats. I'm going to beat you up after school, various things like that is verbal bullying. So in brief, it's saying or writing, mean things. Social bullying. So that's when we see, well, that first one there, intentional shunning. That's what we mentioned. So it's actually an active type of bullying because the group is making sure that Carl over there is not included. Spreading rumors about people, damaging people's reputations, telling others not to be someone's friend. So for hurting someone's reputation or damaging a relationship, then that's social bullying. Physical bullying, that's probably that's the one that's most noticed. I don't know if it's the most common, but it's the most noticed because you can actually see it. The others are a little bit more difficult to see. And so hurting another person, hurting their possessions, that's when we get into the physical aspects. And then we have the newest kid on the block, which is cyberbullying. And as we think about cyberbullying, the similarities and differences to what we see here. What's one of the big differences with cyberbullying? Yeah.
It's not face-to-face.
All right, so it can be anonymous, not necessarily, but it can be. So it's not face-to-face. And what else? It spreads so fast. Yeah, you can. Yeah, electronic communication is very fast. And there's what else? Also, it's always on, you might say.
I was actually punished for being bullied. Not just for how I reacted, no, just for being bullied I got punished. The teachers automatically assumed that since I'm being bullied, I must have done something to deserve it, and they would punish me. And of course I retaliated against the teachers, and I cursed the teachers out, and I had meltdowns, which got me in more trouble. So I got in trouble for being bullied, then I got in trouble for talking back, and when I got in trouble for that, I got in trouble for cursing the teachers out. So it was a never-ending cycle of getting in trouble.
He never stops talking. You've got different hair. He lives in a house that doesn't have squirrels in the roof. We have squirrels in the roof, so we can't watch television that much because it's biting all the wires.
What are the differences that you see between the two individuals? What are you drawn to? Were there any children there with Down syndrome?
Yes.
Were some children there, did it seem like they might have had autism?
Yes.
Did it seem like there seemed to be something going on with them? And as adults, we're conditioned to zoom right in on, well, you look different, you talk different, you behave differently. But as children, before they get enculturated as adults, you might say, what are the differences that they look at?
Nothing.
Well, they didn't see any physical difference. So the idea is to get back to looking, you know, what are some important differences or differences to notice, and what are others that don't really matter. So getting to the idea of developing an awareness of and empathy for differences. I'll often have school-age children engage in an activity just like this. So maybe we'll do this activity and then go through what I have students do, say, in middle school to help develop an awareness of differences.
The presentation will focus on informing parents, educators, clinicians, and others on how to identify and eradicate
Dr. Shore was
on the
recommended for
individual,
institutional.
classroom, and school-wide level.
However, much report from his parents.
For ease of understanding, we'll be alternating AEC throughout the curriculum. This will help me that someone understands but then we have limited representation of gender at a time. Before you begin the training, there are different criteria that might be helpful for you to have her here.
That was a really interesting experiment because my son has tactile issues, and I found I'm a hugger, and I found like when someone was sitting up the back of my neck, like I could hardly stand it. Like I was actually like sitting in kind of like whatever, and I thought, wow, just having that realization that potentially is part of what his issues are. Like when you touch him, he has that sensitivity. That was a great experiment to kind of realize just like how uncomfortable that can feel on a daily basis.
Oh yeah. That might lead them to tell you things that are going on. And sometimes you have to escalate things. Bullying is not a criminal offense, but bullying is also harassment. And that's something that you can talk to a lawyer about. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to take it that far. Intervening immediately, not later, but now, before it gets even worse. So ignoring it won't make it go away. So basically, you just gotta stop it.
I think that, and the problem is that people on the autism spectrum often tend to be good at the kinds of things that people resent you for when you are good at them, and many of us tend to be lousy at sports and other areas, and where it's just the opposite. And of course, things that aren't taught at school, like social skills and daily living skills, if you have challenges in those areas, if anything, you're going to become objects of bullying, or they're more conducive to bullying. So
Yeah.
I thought
One of the things that I think about in terms of bullying or preventing bullying, recognizing it when it occurs, and promoting success for autistic individuals and those who support people who are on the autism spectrum. And by eliminating, eradicating bullying, we leave space for people on the autism spectrum to lead fulfilling and productive lives. Because the effects of bullying can have a great effect, a negative effect, on being fulfilled and productive. So I'm going to thank you for your participation. I know people had a lot of questions. If we didn't get to your questions, or maybe questions will come later, you can certainly contact me at this email address. And these are some of my books, some translated into other languages.